It was like a room full of lizards. Joe, when he started, the tongue was, I thought there were little flies going around or something.
Surprise, we're back for one more episode. I'm Rebecca Lewis and I'm with body language expert Judi James. Last night there was a reunion show and it was the first time our islanders were back together after leaving the villa. And I think it was certainly some of the most awkward reunions we've seen on screen in quite some time. And I want to start with the most awkward, which was Amy and Kurtis and Mora. For anyone who can't remember, Amy left the villa when Kurtis dumped her, and then Mora decided she was going to crack on with Kurtis, and this is the first time the three of them have come face to face since Amy left the villa. I think Amy's body language is quite obvious. She's clearly uncomfortable, but was there anything interesting that stood out to you?
Yes. You know when awkward is really awkward, when it's contagious, because I felt awkward watching that. Yeah. And it was Kurtis. I mean, the head down, it was almost like a man walking to the gallows. He did a little kind of ballroom dancing thing with Mora. He kind of moved around her and everything. But after that, it was just absolute plain awkwardness. He couldn't look up. When he did his interview, he had his back turned to her and he was almost looking over his shoulder so that he couldn't see her face, which was a good idea, because she really had got a badly wronged woman face, I think I would call it. The top lip, the famous top lip was well lifted. And it was almost as though he didn't want Mora to think that he was looking at another woman. I think he was picking up awkwardness from both sides. It's like, if I look round at Amy, I might just turn to stone in case I find that the old attraction is still there. And I loved Mora's possessive gesture, where she literally, and I love this woman for so many reasons, she just picked her hand up and slapped it on his crotch. Yeah. You know, you ain't going nowhere. I think that hand, she'll probably have a fake one applied when he goes out in public by himself, so nobody else must look at him.
Yeah. Do we think, based on this interaction, Mora is still into Kurtis?
You see, the word still doesn't really apply for me, because I've never been convinced by that. I think they're still presenting as a couple. She's the one doing most of the hard work. I was watching his hand, and as you know, I always look for the smaller details. And a long time, his hand was just round the back of her seat where she was grabbing him. But he did then start doing this very strange thumb rub on her arm. It was like, you know, when kids rub sticks together to create fire. It was probably quite uncomfortable, but he seemed to be doing that. So he was sending what are called tie sign signals to her, which is usually something that... But then he's a ballroom dancer. You know, that's how they say, I'm going to do the next twirl. You know, this is how they pass messages on. Right. She's clearly wanting to show that she's smitten. Did you notice that slight disconnect about the eagle pose, though, where, you know, his favourite position?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even want to mind that, actually. I've got no idea what it should look like. I don't want to know. But he said, oh, yeah, you know, I've got to show that to you. And she said, you have, as though, was somebody asleep? Are they play acting that they've had? I don't know. I picked that one up. I thought, well, surely... You'd remember the eagle, I would imagine, unless I've just flown off. I don't know. So yeah, they're still looking. I mean, to put her hand there, she obviously wants to show sexually extremely close.
Yeah. In terms of Amy and Kurtis, is there anything from either of them that suggests one of them still into the other? I thought the entire situation was incredibly uncomfortable viewing, actually. Do you think they picked up on that?
I think the questioning went, I suppose, too far. I love all that kind of stuff, but even I thought, don't go there.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. For me, it's not real enough to make it worth it. When they said to Kurtis, you know, if you hadn't have gone to Casa and Mora, and he had to then sit there, this guy who still wants to be the nice guy, and you could see him completely shrinking, that he really had to say to Amy, who wants something to boost her ego, poor woman, that, no, I probably would have gone off you anyway. That... In the context of the evening, I thought that was unnecessarily painful. But I think the way she was watching him, I think she probably still... Intellectually, she wouldn't touch him with a barge pole, but I think emotionally, that revolving door would be, I mustn't use the word flat with Mora around, but it would be going around very quickly.
Yeah. I want to talk a bit about Anton and Molly May, who never really had any sort of romantic connection in the villa, but there's been a lot of news this week about how he's unfollowed her on social media. Just take a look at the clip.
Yeah, we weren't the closest, but I wouldn't have said we weren't friends.
But what I mean by that, guys, is like I never chose to follow Molly. So if I chose to, if I came out, I wouldn't have chosen. Am I digging a hole?
I don't think Anton is in the wrong at all in this entire situation, but I'm really interested in the body language between the two of them. Do you think he's regretting he's regretting the decision to unfollow her because of what's happened?
I don't think so. For me, that was the best bit of the whole series. There was more action, genuine action in that than I've seen in the whole series, and he was in the middle of it, and that's going to appeal to Anton. I loved the way that he no longer has got a partner. Did you notice? He was over there in the action. I don't think he looked at Belle. He didn't touch her or anything because she wasn't part of that plot. No, I think it's done him a lot of favours because it's kept him in the middle of the whole scene. Yes, he tried to dig himself out, and as Belle, I've forgotten already, so say, Belle was kind of miming. But what did it show us with Molly? I mean, there's this sweet little child with this little, and suddenly she was sitting there so regally, and you could see this other side of her coming out. Nothing wrong with that. No. But I love the way that Tommy didn't know what to do because he's obviously like, I'm your alpha man, but I don't know what's going on. You can see his little eyes darting backwards and forwards in a kind of sheepish grin. I absolutely adored that scene. I thought, this for me, bring on more of that stuff on the island. All we get to see are the kind of romantic relationships. And this is clearly kind of undercurrents that have been going on that they've kept away from us. And I want to see more of that. What was that about? Where did it go back to, etc.?
Yeah. Anton seemed to be under the impression that, sure, they got along, but they weren't friends. And Molly was like, well, we were friends. Does anything in this scene suggest to us who's lying and who's telling the truth?
Well, my brain was trying to go back in time and history. Wasn't he one of the ones that she was spinning along in a love triangle initially? See, we forget this.
Yeah.
I should keep a big archive. I've got a feeling that she had a love triangle, and I think he wasn't happy, but I might be wrong. But and I think it might go back there. So I think he might not mind, because I think that if that's true, that might have been a bit of a, something that he'd been, because his ego took so many batterings in there, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was one. I don't think he was happy at being spun along by her, but I think they both may have carried that. But if I'm wrong, I'll hugely apologise if it was somebody else. But in my mind, I've got that plot going there. So normally in reality TV, you'd carry that all the way through. But I think because it's airbrushed, we've forgotten it. So I think maybe they did have history that we just forgot.
Interesting. You mentioned Tommy didn't know where to look in that entire situation. Let's talk a bit about Tommy and Molly May. So since they've come out of the villa, there have been rumours about them splitting up, Molly not being very happy. But then on the show last night, especially when they were talking to Caroline, they were all over each other.
Oh, absolutely.
What did that tell you?
Well, she was all over him. I mean, she actually looked like he was a fold-up bed or something. I mean, she was... And they looked so much like the winners, didn't they?
Yes.
They if you'd brought thrones in, they would have been sitting on it. And again, good for them. Very elegant. Again, she leant right into him. I looked at his hand was on her hip. Her hand then went on his hand, which would all usually show a very close couple. We saw something slightly different in their clip, which is where she went back to that pseudo... she did that, I call it the flying koala, where I'd love to see Kurtis doing that to Tommy. That would be much more funny. But, she flies at him and clings to him like a little child. So we were seeing that other side to her. They do want to be seen as a couple. They were defining themselves as, no, we're still a very, very close, intimate couple. What more can I say?
I think the episode last night really took us back to some of the older things that maybe we've forgotten, like so Amy and Kurtis, and then also Yewande and Danny, which when she left, that was some great television, and this is the first time they've sort of seen each other since they left the villa. I'm just going to take a look at the clip.
Is there anything you've got to say to each other now?
Just that I hope we can be friends in the future. So I don't think it was difficult at the time, but to lose a friend would be a bit of a waste.
be a bit of a shame.
Yewande, how do you feel towards Danny?
Nothing really.
I think Yewande and Amy both made their feelings really clear last night. But was there anything that surprised you with Yewande's language?
I think it reminded me of her body language all the way through it, which is that I always said that I liked her because she kind of had the most natural body language. And I think here she didn't know what to do with herself, actually. It almost looked like somebody had wound her up to say, look, wear this really low-cut top and be really horrible to him. But I'm not sure she genuinely was that bothered, quite honestly. It was almost as though they'd both been told to sit there like bookends and go for him. It was good viewing because he was sitting there trying to be so much the Mr. Nice Guy, wasn't he? Oh, look, we're all friends, aren't we? I actually know you're not. But I think for me, that's why I always like you, Andy, in there, because you got lots of layers with her. It was almost like she was trying to be very Love Island, but there was somebody else in there as well. I'll never forget when she just came out and sat on, that was her idea of flirting. So I think she looked awkward. I saw almost about 4 different thoughts go through her mind with her body language there. And in the end, she just decided to sort of cut him, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah. You think sounds like she's kind of was very much herself then in this entire scene.
Yeah, and it was almost as though she was going to be herself, but then she was almost trying to be this very glamorous woman as well. And she was trying to combine the two. I think probably if I'd have been her, I'd have worn dungarees and turned around and given him what for without having to worry about anything falling out of the dress. So I think she was slightly restricted. She looked amazing, obviously, but I would have liked to seen her just literally play it straight as she was thinking and not be restricted and think, oh no, actually I can't turn around. But I loved his sort of hand on the hip, trying to be a bit cavalier and brave, and 2 very strong women on either side.
Yeah. Talk a bit about Anna and Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
So they obviously had one epic blow-up in the villa, and then they reunited on last night's show.
And Jordan? Yeah, indeed. How are you guys doing?
No, I think me and Anna are civil. I think Anna would probably agree that we're both looking forward and not looking backwards. I think I'd like to be friends in the future, but she just needs to keep her gun fingers out her face.
Some people did say that there was still a spark between you two on After Sun last week. Is there anything still there?
No.
We always said that there was great sexual chemistry between them. Do you think we still see that here, or is there more sort of anger and resentment overriding that?
There was a bit of both, but it got slightly puzzling because she started implying that he'd kind of made a pass at her, and I think that was her revenge. Because he denied it. What I loved was, and that was one of many tongue pokes there last night. Nobody could keep their tongue in their mouth. It was like a room full of lizards. Joe, when he started, the tongue was... I thought there were little flies going around or something. And that was one of the most deliberate ones when she turned around and she kind of went like that, but she stuck her tongue out fully at him, but with a partial smile. So in a way, that could be seen as still slightly flirty, but also, I hate you, but I'm going to flirt with you if you want. That would be the double meaning. Right. He was trying to look like Mr. Cool, calm guy and smiling nicely, but I think she was very smartly going for revenge. You know, she was probably hoping to cause trouble for him. Yeah. Because he'd been flirting with me. And she didn't like that he denied it.
Yeah. I thought I love Anna, and I think this was so great, this entire scene. Let's talk a bit about Amber actually, and everyone. She was our winner, along with Greg, although really it was Amber. She was reunited with Michael last night at the same time as she was sat with Greg. So just want to see a little bit about their body language together.
What's today like, Amber?
It's okay.
Yeah, I feel like we left it on good terms, to be honest.
Yeah, it's fine.
Sure?
Definitely, yeah. Like, I met this guy and then I won. Like,
is everything clean between us now, do you think? Or do you think there's any lingering feelings?
I think there are lingering feelings. I mean, he was gradually edging towards her. He was, I think, as he realised there wasn't going to be a fight, he started getting a little bit flirty with his own body language. You know, he's got that boyish smile, the I can win anybody over. And I had a feeling he was doing that. Did anybody else notice, though, that she did not touch Greg? She sat there with her hands around her own knees. Now, I would say with these two, I think I like seeing them together, but and they're still an early days couple. I feel sorry for them because they're being almost forced into projecting like a long-term couple, and I don't think they really know one another that well at the moment. Every time they were asked a question, they had to use eye contact because they didn't know what the other one was going to say, so they obviously hadn't rehearsed it. But I was very taken by the way that she did seem to present herself a little bit as a sole character in there. Nice to him and giggly with him, and he looks very fond of her. But she wasn't going to be all over him or anything like that. What that meant was we got these shots of her with Michael, almost looking as though they were kind of alone together in a certain way, with him edging closer and the gap getting bigger and her already sitting by herself. I don't want to sort of say these two have got a future, but I think there's still something a little bit still unresolved there going on.
In terms of Amber and Greg, we said last week that you didn't really feel like she was that into him, but acknowledging that they hadn't really known each other that long. Was there anything from last night when they were talking to Caroline, just the two of them, that suggested, you know, having a week together in the real world without the cameras, that things are progressing, or?
It could do, but to me they epitomise what this show does, which is they're a holiday romance that's now come back to the real world. They're going to see one another in situ, working with their friends and everything. And I think they've all got to find out those things about one another. But these two especially, I think, they were thrown together to a certain extent. I don't think they don't get on, but there were so many disconnects between them and the problem is, I think, they're not going to get that time, just to go and be by themselves. I think the cameras, because they won, the cameras will be following them everywhere. There'll be agents saying, you need to get your own show, you need to... And it would be very good for them, I think, if they could take themselves off, maybe for a week, not even in a hotel together, but just spend time as though they've just met and start to get to know one another and find out if it would really work and not worry about whether it means they have their own show or not. Just start from the beginning again, because they are very sweet together, but I think in a way the pressure could be too much for them.
I wonder if sometimes the cameras actually, in Amber's head, she sort of becomes this sort of sole character because of the camera. So if we look at some of their social media posts, for example, the past week, they went out to celebrate her birthday on Saturday night, and there were some videos on his account of her. She was all over him and sat on his lap and cuddling. And I wonder if part of it is knowing there's a camera on you in the professional setting that makes her, for whatever reason...
It could be. And also don't forget what happened with Danny and Jack last year. I think as soon as Danny came out, I think there was a kind of, right, OK, you make a really nice couple, but don't bind your whole career up with him. And I don't know, somebody might be having that slightly more... business-like...
Long-term,
you can be a couple, but don't only sell yourself as a couple. So, it would be lovely if there is more going on behind the scenes, but it was just that in public like this, she did seem slightly non-committal, which might be that somebody suggested that's a good idea.
Yeah. The show is obviously called Love Island, and we're always hoping for someone to fall in love, but in the last couple of years it's all become about the friendships as well. I want to talk a little bit about the boys in particular. You mentioned earlier that there was some really interesting body language going on between the boys, and maybe Tommy and Kurtis as well. They had their own little moment with Caroline. Did anything stand out to you outside of the romantic aspect of the show? I
think, actually, I have to say that the problem is we've now got to a stage in this show where that can also be contrived. It's almost like a bromance is good for business. I think when the show originally, that's good, it's happened and it's not going to get benefit for either of them, so it must be genuine. Then, we got sort of, they started going off and getting their own shows and things like that. So it's almost as though from now onwards, and maybe this series as well, they're going to go in as coldly thinking there's money in that as well. So I get just as cynical now as I did with everything else. I think Kurtis and Tommy, when they showed you the timeline of it, I thought, it's good, but it was done in those scenes again, let's sit here and say, you're my best friend, everything like that. I think we might be seeing the Kurtis and Tommy show. I think with the other guys, I'm not sure that anything much will last outside. It didn't have that feeling of spontaneity that makes you laugh watching it. In that Harry Potter scene, make it stop. Make it stop now. It's not working. Whatever you're looking for with these guys, it's just not working. They're not that fun or funny. But why don't they do it with the women? You know, there must be a couple of amusing women in there that get on well together and make us laugh. And then they...
I mean, Amber, Anna and Yewande were great together.
Absolutely, but they don't seem to want to show that aspect. You know, it's like the women have got to be with the guys. That's it. Mix it up next year. Mix it all up next year, romantically and everything.
We'll see what happens come January.
Yeah.
The Winter Love Island. Thank you so much, Judi. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this surprise episode and see you soon.